There was a moment when Ruben Amorim was chatting to Sky Sports and Kelly Cates said, "Oh, you've got another interview, so we'll have to let you go." And he dropped his head.
Yeah.
I've done more talking this week than I did in 4 years at Sporting.
Mm. Yeah, it's telling, isn't it? Yeah, look, I think he was probably really frustrated at the game as well. I think I said to you last week that there's a reason why it took an extra couple of days, because he didn't want to take this job till the end of the season, because he is such a smart guy. He would have watched Manchester United, his staff would have watched Manchester United, they would have access to all the data at Manchester United, and he's probably just thought, there's not much I can do with that team. I cannot play the way I want to play football with that team. Obviously, Man United gave an ultimatum of it's now or never, and he jumped. And it was interesting as well, afterwards, he kept using the phrase, this time next year. And I think he knows that team, that squad, he cannot play the way he wants to play football. He cannot implement his philosophy. You're right, when he dropped head, he looked physically fatigued at just by all the circus that goes with this football club. And I think probably the same happened to Erik ten Hag, just got mentally fatigued and just probably was waiting for the sack in the end, Erik ten Hag. And I think by the time he does sort the squad out, he could have aged 10 years during the next 12 months. There's a good chance that's possible.
I suppose the difference with him and Ten Hag is Ten Hag, when he was speaking to Dutch television that time, said, well, listen, I can't play the Ajax way with this bunch. Whereas Amorim has sort of said, well, I'm playing the way I want to play regardless. So if people didn't see the game, his back three was Mazraoui, De Ligt and Johnny Evans. And then wing backs, Ahmed and Dalot. And then his two-man midfield, Eriksen and Casemiro. I know already you're going to talk about the legs there. I mean, that as a two-man midfield. Yeah. And then ahead of them, more centrally than out wide, it was Bruno and Garnacho in behind Rashford leading the line. Yeah. Rashford spat the dummy out last year when Ten Hag dared to play him through the middle, but he was through the middle, obviously, yesterday. And I guess the width is very much meant to come from Ahmed and Dalot. Now, 83 seconds in, that was working just fine.
Well, they counter-attacked brilliantly, and that's what... If your two central midfield players can't dominate the ball, the same old thing I said before, your wing backs are going to get pinned in, and then it becomes a counter-attacking system. And that's pretty much what Manchester United tried to do yesterday, or ended up having to do, and I don't think the manager could tolerate it or stomach it. Maybe for a couple of minutes if the opposition are doing the ascendancy, but a team like Ipswich at home, who move the ball pretty well, but it's still Ipswich. They're basically made up of championship players who got promoted last year or did well in the championship, and they signed well in that regard. But they absolutely ran Manchester United ragged. They won every second ball. They were physically superior. They were sharper. They were hungrier. Their appetite for the game was far more. And I just think that he's now realised the scale or the depth of the problems. He's seen it firsthand. Probably when he's taking the job, he thought to himself, no, maybe we can do something. We can work it. But Johnny Evans playing left side of three centre backs. I mean, in an ideal world with that system, I've said before that you want your wing backs to stay high and stay wide. And that means that the outside centre-backs, so Mazraoui and Evans, have to be comfortable in open space. They have to, when the ball goes wide, they have to be able to slide out and cover a 30 by 30 in a 1v1. Johnny Evans is not comfortable, so he will drift towards De Ligt. He will get his centre midfield players to screen him, and he will probably drag Dalot in as well because he wants comfort around him. I think Mazraoui is tailor-made for that role. He's a high-energy right-back, essentially, and I think he did well yesterday. Amad Diallo, do you want him playing right back? Because that's where he played yesterday. I mean, right of a back five. And he caught out once or twice, which is going to happen when you have a winger playing at right back. His positioning, his concentration is going to drop at times. You don't want him playing right back. So in an ideal world, he'd say to the wing back, stay high and wide. And then remember a couple of times he said that Johnny Evans has to jump in that space. Yeah. I think he called it the dead space, which is just the pockets essentially is what he's talking about there. But Johnny Evans isn't going to go in there. He can't.
It was interesting because post-match he referenced Evans and he was saying, the players, they were thinking a lot on the pitch and they were trying to think, where should I be? And he used Evans as an example and he seemed to say, Johnny didn't realise he should have pressed up. And I was thinking to myself, I think Johnny did realise it, but he also thought there's not a chance I'm doing it. Back we come, Dalot. Yeah,
absolutely. There's no, and that's the problem. Now, what I will say in Amorim's defence is he took off all the players that were causing the problem.
Did he?
The two central midfield players were gone. Johnny Evans was gone and Rashford was gone. I think he sees it. And he's probably sitting there this morning going, how the hell do I fix this? I cannot play this way with these players. So, look, I think that this time next year, by the time he actually gets the squad that he wants, he could just be mentally fatigued and just like worn out from just week after week, twice a week, just going through this. I mean, Ed Sheeran popping up in the interview, he's like, what is this? Like, I cannot be dealing with this. This is not what I signed up for. He had the stuff with that Sky reporter before he even took the job. And then he'd bloody Ed Sheeran gate crash an interview and he's in the middle of it, of giving his post-match. You could see the look on his face, like going...
Interesting. So I kind of thought, a different type of personality might think, wow, I have hit the big time. Look at me here. Here's Roy Keane. Here's Ed Sheeran. And they might kind of light up and think, this is the showbiz thing that I sort of like. Whereas he was like, oh, this... No, this is not for me.
This circus is insane. I want to be on the pitch. I want to be on the pitch with my players. And I think that's where, he said he's going to make a request to the staff at United to not give him interviews. Well, all the best with that, because you're going to have to face up for it. If anything, you're going to get more media requests now. But look, it's going to be a huge job for him. I think he's probably at the stage where he's just got to go nuclear now and just go, right, that's it. I will not go ahead with Johnny Evans, Casemiro, Eriksen, Luke Shaw, Marcus Rashford. I don't know where Bruno Fernandes is going to fit in the system. I think he just has to draw a line under those players that I mentioned. The 3-4-3, I don't see a spot for Bruno Fernandes in this team because he played him kind of in off the right and in a no man's land, really. It's okay for Garnacho. He probably has the ability, the explosiveness to kind of spring out and cause some problems. But Bruno, there's just no position for him right now.
Oh, is there not?
I just don't see it.
So why in that position, if Ahmed outside of Bruno is providing the width, why can there not be a world where a Casemiro or an Eriksen slips a little ball to Bruno and he's in a pocket between their back four and midfield and he's a little slide rule pass through for Rashford and causing havoc as a number 10, no?
Because that would require incredible amount of discipline to hold his position. That guy does not hold his position. He will just show up in that pocket, realise he can't get the ball, then run off somewhere else to get it.
He was better yesterday than he usually is.
Yeah, I still don't think he's got the ability. I mean, you think of people that played in that position, Bernardo Silva. I mean, real high quality, highly intelligent players who can sense where the space is. I don't think Bruno has that. To have that level of discipline, to tuck in the kind of inside right. I thought he looked a little bit lost yesterday. The game seemed to be passing him by. He wasn't sure where to run, when to run, what pocket he was supposed to be in. Like, there's sometimes when you're playing that position, you can take up a position, right? And if the passing lane to you is cut off, right, you have to say, I'm doing a good job for my team now. Because if my passing lane is cut off, there'll be another one wide open. Right? And the discipline required to hold that position. Because if you run off now, the guy who was covering that passing lane will go, oh, brilliant, I don't have to worry about that passing lane anymore. I'll go and do my actual job now. Right? And that's what that whole positional system is about. That if you're being marked or you're being occupied, then somebody else is free. And you're doing a good job for the team. I don't think Bruno has that. He'll just go, oh, my passing lane, I can't get the ball. I'll run into somebody else's space right now. And then all of a sudden the whole thing falls apart. Listen, this manager might have a way of getting through to him, so I wouldn't write him off completely. But definitely the ones I listed earlier. I mean, it's got to the point now where this will never happen. And I think we spoke about this when we were talking about contracts. The manager just needs to call them in and say, look, guys, I'm really sorry. It's not worked out. It's not you, it's us. We made a catastrophic mistake, but all you guys are available in January. So we suggest that you find a new club. And in the meantime, we're going to give you everything to make you feel like a professional. But you guys are going to have to train separate from the group now. And we need to move on. I can't go ahead with this anymore. Now, those players will be livid and it has knock-on effects insofar as they'll be separated from the group. And anybody that's played professional football in England will have seen this situation 100 times where players are separated because the club wants to move them on. And then it's up to the player. Does he want to sit and collect his wages and train? And every facility will be provided for them insofar as physios, food, training ground, changing rooms. Everything will be provided for them, so they'll be kept fit. But they just need to be removed from the group now, and this manager just needs to go, bring in under 21 players, bring in young kids, and then hopefully get a couple of players signed in January. Now, obviously, I know that's a wild statement, and I'm going to address everybody's screaming. You can't do that because all those players have values, And the club will go, well, no, you can't do that now because, Marcus Rashford has a value. And if you put him training separately and say you want him out of the football club, that's going to cost us a huge amount of money. You probably have the guts of £2 million a week going into a changing room that's not even part of it. So it's the nuclear option. And I think I raised it with you a couple of weeks ago and he said, well, you can't do that. Well, I tell you what, if I was him, I would be inching ever closer to that nuclear option right now, because if he has to go ahead with this week in, week out, and suffer this type of, I suppose, what the anguish that he went through yesterday in his first game. I mean, in 12 months' time, the guy will be mentally shot. Like, he'll be gone, So I just think for his own sanity and for him to keep the enthusiasm that he has for the job, I wouldn't rule that out, to be honest with you.
Danny Murphy was on Match of the Day last night, and it's a slightly redundant clip now because you've just analysed it in a very similar way to how he sees it, and the problem is the personnel, not necessarily the system. But it was put to Murphy, well, hang on, Conte and Chelsea in 2017 managed with this kind of a system, so why shouldn't it work in the Premier League in 2024? Here's what he said.
I'd be amazed if they were still playing a 3-4-3 in a year's time. This league's very, very different than continental leagues. We've only had Chelsea in recent years win playing that system. And let's be honest, they had Kante and Matic, two wonderful defensive midfielders in the middle of the pitch, and Costa up top with Hazard supporting him and helping him as well. They don't have those players yet. And how do you find them? It costs hundreds of millions to get the best players in the world. I think when you play three at the back against the majority of good teams in our league who play three high, you end up being a five. And that's really difficult. I don't think we'll see, if United are going to get much better and be competitive, I think that 3-4-3 will evolve into something else.
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on, to be honest with you. And that Chelsea team, that's the one I played against, and you have to be able to retain the ball. And it was Pedro and Hazard and Kante. I think Fabregas was around at the time as well, and Matic. I mean, all those players could handle the ball. So the two in midfield, Kante was the equivalent of an extra player. I mean, look what he did for Leicester the year they won the league. So they are probably the only team. It was Marcos Alonso at left wing back, who was an absolute machine, and Victor Moses, who was a machine up and down. And then you three incredible centre backs: Azpilicueta, David Luiz, and Gary Cahill. I mean, Azpilicueta in his prime was one of the best 1v1 defenders that I've ever seen. I mean, you could leave him isolated anywhere, 1v1, 2v1, and he had the pace, the power, and the tenacity to deal with it. Manchester United don't have any of that. Like exactly what Danny Murphy's talking about there. I experienced that when Frank de Boer got the Crystal Palace job, and he wanted to play this system. 3 centre backs and wingers playing as wing backs, and basically told them to push on. And one of the very first games that he played it, now this is, you probably laugh at this, was we went to Hong Kong in a pre-season tournament, and we played, I think it was us, West Brom, Leicester and Liverpool. And we got to the final. I think we beat West Brom or Leicester in the semi-final. And we got to the final against Liverpool, and it was the year they signed Mo Salah. And it was the first time that it was Mane, Firmino and Salah. And obviously I was left side centre-back and Salah was right wing. Now, I'll tell you what, Joe, you're laughing because it was about 50 degrees, about 100% humidity. I was the only player to start in the semi-final 2 days earlier. I think I was 35 and I wasn't in a good place. And essentially, we were 3 for 3. So there was myself, I think it was Scotty Dan, and I don't know who the right side, it might have been Adrian Mariappa, was just left with the 3 lads in a half of football. To put it mildly, to say that like Salah had a good day would have been, it would have been, I mean, it gives me nightmares now just talking about it, So like, I would say, like, I was screaming. I think it was Andros Townsend was playing left wing back, and I'm saying, Andros, get back here and cover. And Andros was like, no, he told me to stay up. And it was like, honestly, I think they were 2 up at half time, and it was Salah's first game for Liverpool. So I gave him a good start. So I set him on his way.
He remembers it as the confidence boost he needed.
Wasn't pretty. So anyway, so what I'm saying is I have first-hand experience of this, and I know that like the whole thing, my whole issue when we tried to play that. Now, bear in mind, Frank de Boer got sacked after 3 or 4 games or whatever it was, right? Because and he wouldn't deviate from the system. He was just wedded to it. The problem you have with that system is when you spread out and you make the pitch big, in continental leagues, this is my opinion now, and feel free to push back on this, in continental leagues, especially in Dutch football where he came from, there's a premium placed on possession. So when Ajax would give the ball away, the opposition would say, right, you've had the ball, it's now our turn. So they will check out, retain possession, go back to the centre-backs, and they'll have their little spell. The Premier League is the complete opposite. When the ball changes hands, it's most teams, everything goes for the jugular, right? And that system, when you're spread out and the pitch is made big, when the ball turns over, the spaces are too big. And that's what I found. And I said this to him at the time. I said, when that ball turns over, the gap is too big. Like the three of us, the three centre-backs are spread across the width of the pitch. That ball is going straight down that inside channel or slung right over my head. And I think he was saying something along the lines of, no, they will get one pass and we'll have the 3 seconds. You recover, the wing-back recovers, the midfield player recovers. And I went, that's 5 seconds. Like, you will not see the light of day. That ball will be spun down the side. Anyway, first game of the season was Huddersfield at home. I think it was Wagner, high-intensity German manager. And I think we got beat 3-0. I didn't play, but we got beat 3-0. And it was just that in a nutshell. Right, so that's the problem that you have with that system, and that's why Ipswich were quite good yesterday. Anyway, that's just a bit of a tangent of my experience of it, and it's just kind of agreeing with what Danny Murphy said there. The Premier League is too high intensity, it's too direct, it's too crazy, really.
That's so interesting. Manchester City 0, Spurs 4.
I know where this is going.
I have no idea where this is going. Come on, I just want to play you something. Punditry's a cruel mistress.
It's just a cruel world.
Have a listen.
Well, you just mentioned Arsenal being done there. I'm on the verge of being done with Ange, to be honest with you.
Oh no!
And his high line and his funny formations and his intricate things, it's starting to wear thin a little bit now. You know, you can't beat Villa 4-1 and then lose to, well, Ipswich and Crystal Palace both got their one and only wins of the season against them. Make it stop, Joe. Yeah, go on.
You took some of the shit, don't you?
I'm rebuying all my Ange stock. I sold it low and I'm buying it back high. You know, that's just like, this is how not to do it.
But you know what? You may well win the war on that one. So I'm just enjoying my little moment.
Yeah. No, as soon as I saw that, I saw that result. I was just like, oh, here we go. Joe's going to have a field day with this after what I said. I do remember everything that I say. So, look, they did well. Really, really well. City are in a tough place at the minute, and they absolutely ruthlessly dismantled City. Keeper made some good saves, but they were good. And I think that's probably what I think is a problem with Ange. It's like when they're good, and when they're bad, they're bad.
Yeah.
And I think when that system clicks into gear and the way he plays it, when they get the upper hand and they get flowing, it's very, very good. But if someone stifles it or someone... maybe they're not quite at it, or the opposition set up in a way where they can't really do what they want to do, then there's no real plan B with them. They can't adjust in mid-game. That's what I see with them. And they can be turned over quite easy. So, look, he's doing well, Ange, in fairness. I will concede I was probably a bit harsh last week when I said that I'd sold all my stock in Ange. I'm rebuying it.
Well, it's more expensive to buy it back now.
Yeah, exactly.
They were without Romero and Van de Vel. We'll come to City. City are obviously the story, but just one thing on Postecoglou. I do think he's had a kind of moment where he's clocked how to set up this team, because when they played West Ham just a couple of weeks ago, it was 1-1 at half-time, and that day he had a midfield of Basuma, Kulusevski and Maddison centrally, and it was 1-1 at half-time, and he took off Maddison and he put Sarr on. And so Sarr and Basuma together sort of ran all over West Ham, and Kulusevski had a good game as well. And afterwards, Ange was asked about the substitution, and he said, look, we just needed more running power. And whether it's going to be Kulusevski centrally or not, it was Maddison obviously on Saturday. I think he's now looking at Basuma and Sarr and saying, we need that kind of beef, that running ability. Yeah. By the way, they're both really good players as well, but obviously they've got the legs. So I kind of feel like he's starting to figure out certain things and make them a little bit tougher to beat. That'd be
that's fair.
Hopeful.
That's fair. And then look, like injuries obviously play a huge part, you know, in terms of players being missing and stuff. And can he readjust? Can he find a way of winning games when he hasn't got either Basuma or Sarr, when he does have to play players centrally? So that's what I'm talking about. That's where the inconsistencies come from. You know, if he has his first 11, they're all fit, firing and in form, then it's a pretty good Spurs team. But it's when they don't have that, where's the plan B? And I think I said that to you last week or a couple of weeks ago when they got beat.
Yeah.
So yeah, go on.
Well, look, yeah, I don't really want to talk about Spurs. I only brought them up to play the clip back. So let's move on to the actual situation here. Unbeaten in 52 home games and then beaten 4-0. Rodri on the pitch waving his Ballon d'Or pre-game. There's a moment where Haaland turns to him and says, "Come on, play." You know, and it's more than just a joke, I think. It's like a desperation. So they'd Walker, Stones, Nakanji, Garvidal, Gundogan and Bernardo Silva as their two in midfield, Foden ahead of them, Rico Lewis one wing, Savino the other, and then Haaland up front. Like, people are pointing just to the energy in the team more than anything.
Yeah, like, I mean, they're still creating chances. I mean, the Sporting Lisbon game, you know, they weren't that bad.
No.
They could have had a couple more, and you know, so it was fine. But it just seems to be how quick the toll goes in at the moment. And I think the players just seem a little bit low, maybe a little bit full of self-pity, maybe a little bit like Rodri's missing. You know, they've been going hammer and tongs for 4 or 5 years. You know, yes, they've added some good players. Yes, they've tried to regenerate the squad. You know, the re-signing of Gundogan was almost in desperation. You know, they let him go and they brought him back. There's a reason they let him go.
I have to say, he looked actually overweight. Not just old yesterday, but I thought overweight trying to run back at 34.
Yeah, and I think that's telling in itself, because, you know, they let him go. And Barcelona didn't really put up a fight, okay? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, we're in trouble. We didn't get what we want. Let's bring him back, you know. And it's almost nostalgia is bringing him back. So that's almost kind of a figure of the issues that they're having.
Yeah.
And I just think since Rodri's gone out of the team, a couple of things have gone against him, and it just seemed to be full of self-pity, a little bit of like feeling sorry for themselves. And Pep needs to figure that out. This is where he needs to earn his corner now. We all talk about what a great manager he is. And he has been faced with these situations. Well, maybe not when you look statistically in terms of the amount of games he's lost. It was 5 in a row, first time that's ever happened to him.
Yeah.
You know, shipping goals in a huge way. So he's the one now that's got to motivate the players. He's got to come in, pick them up off the floor, get them concentrated, get them re-engaged, and get them moving in the right direction. Klopp has that in the locker, if you know what I mean. He had that kind of larger-than-life personality. You know, could inspire. You know, I don't know. I'd be interested to see if Pep has that almost Churchillian speech for the players to get them going again. It'd be interesting to see, but they do look way off at the moment. I'm sure they will get them going. I tell you one thing that was really interesting, Joe, was Kyle Walker.
Well, yeah, what do you think? So initially Son and then Timo Werner. And this is Walker who, like, when you think of the last 2-3 years, it was like him and Mbappe in the World Cup was its own massive subplot. And they had a good gallop at one stage and he did fine. And Vinicius Jr. in a Champions League, I'll take care of him. But there was Bournemouth already this year where he's kind of exposed, and I know Timo Werner's fresh off the bench, but it was just so it was like a wow moment of he just burned him.
I think for him as well, I think that was, I mean, every player has that moment where they just go, oh my God. He took his position, you know, when he defends, because he's so quick.
Yeah.
He'd be quite arrogant with his positioning. He can just go on then, I dare you. And anyone that pushes it. But I promise you, he took the position. He almost slowed down to stop Werner going inside. So he almost gave Werner a yard, right? So he's saying, right, you're going down the line. There's no way you're coming inside. And I dare you, push it down the line and we'll have a race. Come on then. And he's done that for 12 years, I'd say, in terms of what he's doing. But I'd say when Werner pushed it and he looked for that gear and it wasn't there, I mean, every player, you ask any player that's finished, we all have that moment where we go, oh my God, that's never happened to me before. And I think that was Kyle Walker's. I think that was the moment where he must just go, oh my goodness, I can't do that anymore now. I've got to give myself a yard. And now players can cut inside. And that's why those battles against Vinicius and Mbappe and all those top players were amazing. But the end comes quick, because I think last season he was, you know, we were all, I remember a couple of times in amazement going, geez, that guy's been at it so long. Yeah. He's the age that he is, and he still has that turn of pace. But I tell you what, man, it falls off quick. And this is the point that I always made with Mo Salah and his contract. Like, the end comes quick. And I think if you gave, I know I'm going a bit off topic here, but I think it ties in. But like, if you go and give Mo Salah the 3 or the 4 year deal on the money that he's in, I promise you, the end comes in a matter of weeks, right? Where Mo Salah will have that moment as well, where he will just, I don't know when it'll be, but when he will just make that sprint and all of a sudden it's just not there. And he can't get to the positions that he's getting into currently. Those balls over the top where he turned Alex McCarthy at the weekend, that one just skips away from him and goes into Alex McCarthy's arms. He will have that moment. So that's what Liverpool are guarding against. So I know every Liverpool fan out there is saying, no, give him what he wants, keep him, he's our legend. But Liverpool need to guard against that, because when he has his moment, and it could be this time next year, and if he's got just under 3 years to run on a huge contract, Liverpool are in all sorts of problems because they can't shift him. And I think that was Kyle Walker's moment at the weekend, because I don't think anybody's ever done that to Kyle Walker.
It was unbelievable.
Oh my God, I looked at him and my heart sank, and I just went, oh my God, that's not pretty.
Can you imagine that? So like, play continues, the passage of play goes on, and as he's just jogging back to his position, his head in that moment must be like, oh my, like a million miles an hour. My career's just changed. That's a line in the sand in terms of how I have to defend. I've got to defend like Damien Delaney used to defend now.
Or point the finger and get other people over the
No, but I've got to be honest. I've got to do everything perfectly.
Yeah.
I've got, my positions are going to have to be good.
Yeah, I know, I agree. But you know what? He'll spend a few weeks lying to himself, like, oh, I'm tired, or my hamstring's a bit tight, or geez, just didn't feel good that day, or the game was finished anyway. But in your heart of hearts, and in your darkest, deepest part of your soul, like, and you just won't admit it now, and it'll happen to him again. And it'll happen to him again. And all of a sudden, like, he only has a year to run his contract. I mean, they will have seen that coming, City, his numbers in training and stuff. But I think that was one of those moments where if he did have a chance of getting an extension, no, I don't think he did anyway. But, like, that's it now. Like, he'll be gone. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen in January either, if he got the move that he wanted. Or, it's a cruel game in that regard, Joe.
Yeah. It's worth just mentioning, you did already, but akin to the Sporting game, Haaland is missing 2, 3, 4 good chances, which completely changed the game if he puts them 1 or 2-0 up. By the way, just this morning, NBC have put it up on X. Mo Salah is putting the squeeze on Liverpool in a big way. He's sort of sensing, a bit like Roy Keane when he scored a load of goals in 2000 when his contract was up. Arsenal away scored goals, and it was real, like, sign the contract. Mo came out after the game yesterday and he said, we're in December, I haven't received an offer, so I'm probably more out than in. Yeah. And he was asked, do you feel disappointed? He said, of course. So listen, he gets them out of jail again yesterday. He's a negotiator. He understands. So he's putting the squeeze on.
The iron is hot, and he's striking, and he knows the fans will be screaming. But, like, listen, Liverpool have access to a level of data that we will never see with regards to the player's physical output, his training numbers. He will be tested. All the players are, hydration to everything, right? Every morning, right? Everything is tested. And they'll have a dossier on him, and they'll be thinking, well, he's still putting up the numbers, but we have to be careful that if we give him 3 years and make him the highest paid player in Liverpool's history, and the end comes quick, we don't want to be lumbered with that, because we are not shifting him. So that's what Liverpool are weighing up. I know Liverpool fans don't want to hear that. I know Liverpool fans are saying it doesn't matter, just give it to him. But the club have to be prudent, and they have to be careful, and they have to make sure they manage this right. And if Salah really wants to stay at Liverpool, then maybe he takes a 1-year deal or a brand new 18-month deal starting from January. So it gets the end of the season, and then Liverpool are only on the hook for one more season. He might not get that 3-4 year deal that he probably wants. So, I mean, there might be a compromise on his part as well.
Yeah.
But I suppose maybe Liverpool have, with the data I'm talking about, have seen that they're coming out, and that's why they haven't made him an offer. Maybe they're quite happy to let him move on. I don't know. But these are the discussions that are taking place.
Yeah. So we're pretty much out of time. I mean, Leicester are looking for a new manager. Potter, Moyes, Van Nistelrooy are the 3 favourites. Steve Cooper got the bullet after losing to Chelsea. There was a routine win for Arsenal. I guess they're kind of praying, you know what, if City beat Liverpool next weekend, we're sort of semi within touching distance. And I guess that's why, I mean, we might talk next week. Liverpool City next Sunday.
Huge.
Like, Liverpool go 11 points clear.
Yeah.
I don't know, you catch them.
Was it you I said last week, Joe, that I think Chelsea will be the closest?
Did. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched them again on the weekend. They are in such a good place right now. They're in an upgrade on Nicholas Jackson. No, I'm not saying he's a brilliant player, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Chelsea. There's no expectation, and I think they could be the closest challengers. They might run out of steam, but they have a squad, and they only have that Conference League where half the players aren't even in the European squad. So Chelsea are just bubbling away nicely under the surface, and I think Maresca deserves an awful lot of credit for what he's done. The way they're playing.
Yeah. They're creating more chances than 2-1 suggests.
They're so good in everything that they do, and they have options. They have a squad. Reece James is left out. The others look to be flagging, but I wouldn't be surprised that if Chelsea are Liverpool's closest competitor this year. Now, I do expect City and Arsenal to get themselves moving, but if Liverpool and Chelsea can kind of create a gap in the next few weeks, especially post-Christmas, but I do still think it's Liverpool's league this year to throw away. I mean, it's theirs right now. They're in the best form, they're in the best shape that they've possibly been in. They're winning games, they look good. So it's theirs at the moment.
Okay. Brilliant stuff. We might talk next week.
Joe.
We'll see what happens next weekend and where we are. Thanks so much, Damien.
Cheers, Joe. Thanks.